In a world where whispers can carry the weight of stones, a secret, long buried beneath layers of pride and prejudice, was about to be unearthed by the purest sound imaginable. The truth, when it finally sang, would not just echo through a silent hall, but shatter the very foundations of what a community believed about itself, forcing them to confront the beautiful, brutal cost of their own judgments. After listening to the whole story, you will definitely share your opinion in the comments. So let's move towards the story. The air in the village of Oakhaven always tasted of damp earth and wood smoke, a comforting scent that clung to Alara like a second skin. She was a child of the forest's edge, her days spent tracing the patterns of sunlight through leaves, her nights filled with the symphony of crickets and distant owl calls. Unlike the other children who chattered about new toys or exciting adventures, Alara's world was a quiet one, painted in the muted tones of poverty. Her clothes were mended countless times, her shoes thin, and her hair, the color of rich loam, was often tangled with twigs and leaves from her explorations. Yet, within her, a vibrant, unspoken song resonated, a melody known only to the birds she mimicked and the rustling wind that seemed to whisper secrets just to her. Life in Oakhaven was stratified, a harsh reality understood even by its youngest inhabitants. The village square, with its grand fountain and bustling market, belonged to families like the Blackwoods, whose homes boasted sturdy stone walls and gardens overflowing with roses. Then there were the fringes, the weathered cottages tucked away on the paths leading to the whispering woods, where families like Alara's lived, their existence a constant testament to resilience. Her mother, a woman etched with the lines of relentless labor, worked tirelessly in the Blackwoods kitchens, her hands calloused, her spirit unwavering. Alara knew her mother's silent sacrifices, the way her shoulders sometimes drooped with exhaustion, the way her smile, though tired, always held an unwavering warmth when it was directed at her only child. This understanding, this deep, unspoken empathy for her mother's plight, was the crucible in which Alara's quiet strength was forged. School was a different world, a place of bright chalk dust and the stern gaze of Mrs. Albright, a woman whose neat bun and crisply starched blouses seemed to embody the rigid order of the village. Alara sat in the back, a silent observer, absorbing lessons with a keen intelligence that often went unnoticed beneath her unassuming exterior. She rarely spoke, not out of shyness, but from a profound awareness of her place. Her voice, if it ever emerged, felt like an intrusion, a foreign sound in a room filled with children whose accents were crisper, whose clothes were newer, whose future seemed already paved with ease. The other children, though not overtly cruel, often kept their distance, their young minds echoing the unspoken biases of their parents. Alara was the quiet one, the poor one, a silent shadow at the edges of their vibrant games. One brisk autumn morning, an announcement rippled through the classroom, bringing with it a tremor of excitement and apprehension. The annual school performance was approaching, a grand affair held in the village hall, where parents and dignitaries gathered to witness the blossoming talents of Oakhaven's youth. This year, Mrs. Albright declared, there would be a special solo performance. Auditions would be held, and only the most exceptional voice would be chosen. A collective gasp, then a flurry of excited whispers filled the room. Children nudged each other, eyes sparkling with ambition. Alara, as usual, remained still, her gaze fixed on the window, watching a lone bird flit through the bare branches of an oak tree. She felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach, a sense of disconnect from the bustling energy around her. The stage, with its bright lights and expectant faces, felt like a distant, unreachable star. Days passed, filled with the murmur of practicing scales and hushed discussions about who might be chosen. The favorites were clear: Thomas, whose booming voice already filled the playground with off-key renditions of folk songs, and Clara, whose delicate soprano was a familiar sound in the church choir. Alara listened, a quiet observer, her heart a subtle counterpoint to the rising anticipation. She knew she wouldn't even consider auditioning. The very thought felt like an impossibility. Her voice was a secret, a private comfort, never meant for public display. It was a gift she shared only with the rustling leaves and the whispering wind, a fragile, intimate melody that had grown within her, nurtured by the silent solitude of her world. The thought of exposing it, of letting it be judged and perhaps found wanting, was a fear she couldn't articulate, a deep-seated vulnerability that kept her rooted to the back of the classroom. Then came the day of the auditions. One by one, students stepped forward, their voices trembling with nerves or ringing with confidence. Alara watched, a silent specter in the corner, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She felt a strange mixture of admiration and detachment as each child poured their heart into their song. As the last hopeful singer finished, Mrs. Albright sighed, a faint line of disappointment creasing her brow. None had truly captivated her. None had possessed that spark she sought. Just as she was about to dismiss the class, her gaze, almost by accident, fell upon Alara. Perhaps it was the unwavering stillness in the girl's posture, or the deep, liquid pools of her eyes that caught the teacher's attention. A sudden, uncharacteristic impulse stirred within Mrs. Albright, a flicker of curiosity that defied her usual pragmatism. "Alara," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the classroom. The name hung in the air, unexpected, drawing every eye. Alara flinched, her body tensing, caught in the sudden spotlight. She slowly lifted her head, her gaze meeting Mrs. Albright's. "Have you ever considered singing?" Mrs. Albright continued, her tone surprisingly gentle. A wave of heat rushed through Alara's cheeks. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, her throat suddenly dry. The murmurs from her classmates began, a soft current of disbelief. Alara? Sing? The very idea seemed absurd to them. They knew her only as the quiet shadow, not as a repository of hidden talent. But Mrs. Albright, guided by an intuition she couldn't explain, persisted. "Just try, Alara. There's no harm in trying." The words hung in air, a challenge, an invitation. Alara's heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. The fear was immense, suffocating, yet beneath it, a tiny, almost imperceptible spark ignited. It was the echo of her mother's gentle lullabies, the memory of her own voice soaring freely when no one was listening, a secret language she shared with the wind. Slowly, agonizingly, Alara pushed herself to her feet. The classroom felt like a vast, echoing chamber, every eye a pinprick of judgment. She walked to the front of the room, her thin legs feeling strangely detached from her body, her gaze fixed on a distant point beyond the window, beyond the village, somewhere in the endless expanse of the sky. She took a deep, shaky breath, and then, from somewhere deep within her, a sound began to emerge. It was soft at first, barely a whisper, a tentative thread of melody. But as she continued, as the fear began to recede, replaced by the sheer, unadulterated joy of the music itself, her voice grew, unfolding like a fragile blossom. It was a voice of startling purity, rich and clear, carrying the weight of untold stories, of silent resilience, of the unyielding beauty found in the quiet corners of the world. The classroom, which moments before had been filled with whispered doubts, fell utterly, completely silent. The sound that filled the classroom was unlike anything Mrs. Albright or the children of Oakhaven had ever heard. It wasn't just a voice. It was a distillation of the forest's breath, the river's murmur, and the quiet dignity of a life lived close to the earth. Alara sang of resilience, of enduring beauty found in forgotten places, of a spirit that refused to be diminished by circumstance. Her notes soared, pure and unadorned, weaving a tapestry of raw emotion that seemed to hang in the air, shimmering with an almost tangible light. Thomas, who had prided himself on a strong voice, sat frozen, his mouth slightly agape. Clara, usually so self-assured, felt a prickle of tears behind her eyes, recognizing in Alara's song a depth she hadn't known music could possess. The usual restless energy of the classroom had vanished. replaced by an awestruck silence, a collective breath held in suspended animation. Mrs. Albright, a woman known for her composure, felt an unexpected tremor in her chest. Her initial impulse, a mere whim, had unearthed a treasure. She saw not just a quiet village girl, but a profound artist, a vessel for a truly extraordinary gift. When Alara's song finally faded, leaving behind only the echo of its beauty, the silence that followed was profound, weighty with a lingering magic. No one spoke, no one applauded immediately. It was as if any sound would shatter the delicate spell that had been cast. Then, slowly, a single tear traced a path down Mrs. Albright's cheek. She cleared her throat, her voice a little unsteady. "Alara," she whispered, her eyes shining. That was truly remarkable." The words, though simple, carried the weight of genuine wonder. The news of Alara's voice spread through Oakhaven like wildfire, amplified by the stunned whispers of the children who had witnessed the audition. For the first time, Alara became the subject of conversations not tinged with pity or dismissal, but with genuine curiosity and, for some, grudging admiration. Parents who had always seen her as merely the daughter of the cleaner now wondered about the mysterious gift she possessed. The village, accustomed to its rigid social order, found itself subtly disrupted by this unexpected talent emerging from its periphery. There was excitement, yes, but also a palpable undercurrent of unease. How could such a voice come from such a place? It challenged their established notions, their comfortable prejudices. As the date of the school performance drew nearer, Alara's daily life shifted. Mrs. Albright, now fully invested, dedicated extra time to guiding her, not in technique. For Alara's voice seemed to possess an innate perfection, but in stage presence, in the art of sharing such an intimate gift with an audience. Alara, still prone to her quiet introspection, found herself wrestling with the unfamiliarity of attention. The fear of failure, of not living up to the unexpected expectations, was a constant companion. Yet, beneath it, a blossoming sense of purpose took root. When she sang, she no longer felt like Alara, the quiet girl from the edge of the woods. She felt like something larger, something boundless, connected to a power she was only just beginning to understand. Her mother, initially bewildered by the sudden attention on her daughter, grew immensely proud. She watched Alara practice in their tiny cottage, her eyes brimming with unshed tears, remembering the simple lullabies she sang to her child, never imagining they would lead to this. The mother, too, felt the subtle shift in the villagers' gazes, the hesitant nods from people who had previously ignored her. It wasn't charity, it was recognition, earned through her daughter's undeniable talent. It was a dignity she hadn't realized she craved until it began to gently unfurl before her. The day of the school performance arrived, cloaked in a crisp autumn chill. The village hall buzzed with anticipation, filled to capacity with parents, teachers, and curious villagers. The air hummed with hushed conversations, many revolving around the unexpected soloist. Thomas and Clara performed their pieces admirably, receiving polite applause. Then, it was time for Alara. A hush fell over the hall as Mrs. Albright introduced her, her voice unusually resonant with pride. Alara walked onto the stage, her small figure seemingly swallowed by the vastness of the space, the single spotlight illuminating her almost painfully. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She saw the faces in the audience, a sea of expectant eyes, some kind, some skeptical, some merely curious. She saw her mother in the front row, a beacon of unwavering love. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep, fortifying breath. When she opened them again, she didn't see the crowd, or the judgments, or the expectations. She saw the whispering woods behind her cottage, felt the cool touch of the river on her bare feet, heard the rustling leaves that always held her secrets. And then she began to sing. Her voice, clear and strong, soared through the hall, carrying with it the raw, unvarnished truth of a life lived simply, resiliently. It was a song of quiet strength, of enduring hope, of the kind of beauty that blossoms in unexpected places. Every note was infused with an honesty that transcended words, touching something primal within each listener. The rustle of programs ceased, the faint coughs died away. The entire hall fell utterly, completely silent, held captive by the pure, emotional resonance of Alara's voice. The silence in the village hall was not merely an absence of sound. It was a profound, almost sacred hush, a collective intake of breath from hundreds of souls held captive by the sheer, unadulterated beauty of Alara's voice. Each note she sang seemed to bypass the intellect and go straight to the heart, stirring dormant emotions, memories long forgotten. Her voice, devoid of artifice, carried the scent of wet earth after a summer rain, the unwavering glint of sunlight on a distant stream, the quiet resilience of a single, steadfast flame in a gathering darkness. It spoke of the unseen struggles, the hidden sorrows, and the unyielding strength found in the most unassuming places. For the villagers, Alara's song was a mirror. Mrs. Blackwood, usually so composed, felt an unexpected ache in her chest as the melody unwound, remembering a simpler time, a youthful idealism she had long since buried under layers of social expectation. Mr. Henderson, the stern owner of the general store, found himself unexpectedly moved, a faint warmth spreading through him as if rekindling a spark of forgotten kindness. Even the children, usually fidgety and distracted, sat with wide, unblinking eyes, sensing the magnitude of the moment, absorbing the raw emotion that poured from the stage. Alara, lost within the embrace of her own music, was no longer aware of the audience as a judging entity. She was simply the conduit for a truth that needed to be sung, a story that needed to be heard. Her eyes were closed for much of the performance, her brow furrowed in a gentle concentration, her hands clasped loosely before her. It was a performance born not of ambition, but of an urgent, inner necessity, a profound yearning to express the inexpressible. She sang of the dignity of hard work, of the quiet pride of providing, of the enduring spirit of hope even when resources were scarce. She sang, unknowingly, the story of her mother, of their lives on the edge of the village, a story of quiet beauty and unwavering spirit that the village had largely overlooked or perhaps deliberately ignored. As the final, lingering note faded into the hushed air, the silence that followed was even more profound than before. It hung heavy, pregnant with the weight of unspoken feelings, of shifted perspectives, of the undeniable power of a truth revealed. There was no immediate applause, no polite claps. Instead, there was a collective sigh, a release of held breath, a slow, dawning realization washing over the audience. For a moment, the carefully constructed social barriers of Oakhaven seemed to waver, blurred by the universality of the emotion Alara had evoked. It was a silence filled with introspection, with a quiet confrontation of their own assumptions, their own prejudices. Then, a single sound broke the stillness, a muffled sob from the front row. It was Alara's mother, her face streaked with tears, tears not of sadness, but of an overwhelming, incandescent pride. Her daughter, her quiet, often overlooked Alara, had just held an entire village spellbound, not with grand gestures or inherited status, but with the raw, pure power of her own spirit. The sound seemed to break the dam. A ripple of soft, murmuring appreciation began to spread, growing slowly into a hesitant, then resolute, wave of applause. It wasn't the polite, obligatory applause given to children who had performed well. It was a spontaneous, heartfelt outpouring of admiration, of respect, of a kind of dawning revelation. Mrs. Albright, her eyes still glistening, walked onto the stage and gently placed her hand on Alara's shoulder. Alara, blinking her eyes open, saw the sea of faces, no longer a daunting, judging mass, but individual expressions of awe, wonder, and even, she dared to imagine, a burgeoning understanding. She saw Mr. Henderson wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. She saw Mrs. Blackwood nodding slowly, a strange, thoughtful expression on her face. And most importantly, she saw her mother, beaming through her tears, her entire being radiating an almost unbearable joy. The silence that had initially been filled with her song was now filled with the rumble of hundreds of claps, growing louder and louder, a true ovation. But it was the initial silence, the one heavy with unspoken emotions and the quiet confrontation of truth, that would forever be etched in the memory of Oakhaven. It was the moment a village, through the pure voice of a child, truly heard itself for the very first time. The applause swelled, a roaring tide of sound that washed over Alara, bathing her in its warmth. It wasn't just for a beautiful voice. It was for the courage of a quiet girl who had dared to stand before them, to share a truth that resonated deeply within their own forgotten corners. The standing ovation that followed was unprecedented for a school performance in Oakhaven. Dignitaries, who usually sat with detached politeness, rose to their feet, their faces reflecting a genuine admiration that transcended social standing. For the first time, Alara wasn't the village girl or the poor one. She was simply Alara, the girl who had made them feel. In the days and weeks that followed, a subtle but profound shift rippled through Oakhaven. The stiff formality that often characterized interactions between the different strata of the village began to soften. Shopkeepers offered Alara's mother a kinder smile, a more patient word. Children who had previously ignored Alara and now approached her with a newfound curiosity, a desire to hear her speak, to be near the quiet magic she exuded. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but a gradual thawing of the rigid social frost that had long defined their community. The silence that Alara had commanded on stage had given way to a more open dialogue, a quiet acknowledgement of shared humanity. Alara herself remained largely unchanged by the sudden attention. Her spirit, deeply rooted in the simplicity of her upbringing, kept her grounded. She still preferred the quiet solace of the woods, still found comfort in the rustling leaves and the whispering wind. But now, when she sang, it was with a newfound confidence, a quiet understanding that her voice was not just her own, but a gift to be shared. Mrs. Albright, recognizing the immense talent and the delicate spirit of her student, became a quiet mentor, helping Alara navigate the burgeoning interest in her abilities, ensuring her gift was nurtured, not exploited. Offers began to arrive, invitations to sing at other village events, whispers of scholarships to music schools in larger towns. The path that had seemed so narrow for Alara was now opening, revealing possibilities she had never dared to dream of. But the most significant change was within the hearts of the villagers themselves. The memory of Alara's song, of the profound silence it had invoked, lingered like a gentle echo. It served as a quiet reminder that true worth was not measured by wealth or status, but by the purity of one's spirit, the depth of one's kindness, and the ability to touch the lives of others with genuine emotion. The injustice of overlooking someone based on their circumstances, the inner struggle of their own biases, and the potential for transformation through simple acts of listening and empathy. These were the lessons etched into their collective consciousness by the voice of a quiet village girl. Alara's voice had not just filled a hall. It had filled a void in the community's soul. It had become a catalyst for introspection, a gentle urging towards a more compassionate understanding of one another. The village of Oakhaven, once defined by its unspoken divisions, began to learn the true melody of connection, a harmony built on respect, kindness, and the undeniable power of a voice that dared to sing its truth. And as for Alara, she continued to sing, her melodies weaving through the fabric of Oakhaven, a living testament to the extraordinary power of an ordinary human heart.